6 months after my wife died, my phone buzzed with a text from a wrong number. "I love you," it said. I was lonely enough that I never corrected her. For months, her daily messages were my only connection to the world. Then, one day, they stopped, and I knew I had to find the woman whose borrowed love had been keeping me alive. Before we get into it, I'd love to know, what city are you watching from today? And be sure to subscribe for our daily stories. Okay, let's go back to that first text message. Grief is a thief. It doesn't just take the person you love. It strips the air from your lungs, taste from your food, color from your days. In the 6 months since I lost my wife, Anna, my life was a grayscale photograph. I went to work, I came home, I ate over the kitchen sink. The house, our house, was a museum to a life that ended mid-sentence. Her mug sat by the sink, a faint ring at the bottom. Her book waited on the nightstand, a place marked on a page she would never finish. I moved through the rooms like a guest in a stranger's home, careful not to disturb anything. Silence pressed on me like weather. It had weight. My friends called at first. I didn't answer. I had nothing to say. Words felt like furniture I couldn't lift. The text arrived on a Tuesday, a gray Tuesday in October. I was on the edge of my unmade bed when the phone buzzed. The sound felt out of place in the stillness. I picked it up, expecting a work email, another demand from a world I no longer felt a part of. It wasn't a work email. It was a message from an unknown number. "Good morning, my love," it read. "Just wanted you to be the first thing I thought of today. I'll see you after work. H." I stared at the words. Simple. Intimate. Not meant for me. A wrong number. I should have deleted it. I should have replied, "Sorry, wrong person." That would have been the decent thing. I didn't. I read it again. The warmth, the easy closeness. It was a language I'd forgotten. A dispatch from a life no longer mine. I put the phone down and went to work. The next morning it happened again. Another buzz, another message. "The sun is out today," it read. "I hope you can feel it on your face, wherever you are. I'll be there this afternoon. I'm bringing your favorite book. H." My thumb hovered over reply. 5 seconds to type wrong number. 5 seconds to sever this strange accidental thread and go back to the proper gray of my days. I couldn't. Her words, small notes meant for someone else, were the first flicker of warmth I'd felt in half a year. I put the phone in my pocket. The lie, I told myself, was kinder than the void. I didn't know that listening to a stranger's love story was the first step toward beginning my own. Not correcting her wasn't a one-time choice. It was a daily one. I would wake in the stillness, and the phone would buzz like a small heartbeat on the nightstand. Every morning brought a new message. "Good morning, my love. The doctor was in again. He said you were stable. I read him the next chapter of that history book you love. I brought a new photo for your room today. It's the dog with a leaf on his head. He looks offended. It made me laugh. I hope in some way it reached you. It's raining again. I'm by your window, humming our song. I hope, wherever you are, you can hear it."
Her name, I learned, was Harper. His name was Ben. Through those one-sided conversations, I pieced together their life. He was in a hospital, in a coma or close. A sudden illness had taken him from her in all the ways that matter. And she, this woman I'd never met, was his anchor, memory keeper, voice in a quiet room that refused to go silent. My life kept its narrow rhythm. Work, home. But the house wasn't as empty. It held an echo of her voice. I was a secret keeper, a lonely eavesdropper living on borrowed warmth. Shame hummed under everything. It was also a lifeline. Her steady devotion to a man who couldn't reply was a rebuke to my own retreat. She was fighting. I had quit. Her persistence, her ordinary, stubborn love started to change me. I noticed the sky again. Food had taste. For the first time in months, I felt like a person who might belong in his own life. For 3 months, this was the routine. Her messages into the void, and me reading them in secret. Then one Tuesday, the morning text didn't arrive. I stared at the blank screen. I told myself it was nothing. She was busy. Her phone had died. But a cold panic worked its way through my chest. Another day passed. Nothing. I sat in my house and understood that the silence I once chose was now the one thing I couldn't bear. I had been a spectator to her hope for months. As that hope faltered, something new rose in me, a protective concern I didn't recognize. I wasn't just a reader anymore. I felt like a character in her story, and I had a sinking sense that a final chapter was being written. I had to find her. On the 3rd day, the absence of that buzz felt like a hole in the morning. The quiet had edges. I paced with the phone in my hand, imagining every scenario. Had she realized the number was wrong, lost her phone, or had something happened? Her last texts had carried a tired edge. The silence in this room is so loud sometimes, my love. The thought that she might be in trouble was unbearable. The man who had drifted for 9 months was gone. In his place stood someone with a task. I had to find her. I did something I hadn't done since Anna died. I made a call. I called my best friend, Mark, the friend whose calls I had ignored for months. He answered on the first ring, surprised, then careful. "Elijah, that you? You okay?" "I'm here," I said, my voice rough with rust. "Mark, I need a favor. I know this sounds unusual. I need you to find someone. I only have a phone number." I told him the whole story. The wrong number texts, the widower who hadn't corrected her, the sudden silence. He listened without judgment. "Okay," he said. "Send me the number. I'll see what I can find." An hour later, he called back. His tone had shifted. "I got a name. The number's registered to Harper Collins. And, man." "What?" "I found something else," he said, softening. "A local paper. It's an obituary." I sat as he read. It wasn't hers. It was her husband's. Ben Collins had passed away 3 days ago, peacefully, after a long illness. The texts hadn't stopped because she'd learned the truth. They stopped because her vigil had ended. Her hope, the same hope I'd been living on, had met the one answer it couldn't argue with. I thanked him and hung up. Ben was gone. Harper, the woman whose private courage had been my daily bread, was now a widow, like me. The obituary listed the funeral details. It was the next day. I had no right to be there. I was a stranger at the edge of their story.
But I looked at the address of the small church across town and knew I would go. I needed to see the face of the woman whose words had, in a strange way, kept me breathing. The next morning, I stood in front of my closet, looking for a plain, dark suit, the kind that lets you vanish into a crowd. The funeral was at 11. I felt like a trespasser. But the pull of grief and of the odd bond I felt with this woman wouldn't let me stay home. The church was small and sunlit, a stark contrast to the occasion. I slid into a back pew, a shadow among true mourners. Then I saw her, for the first time. She stood in the front row, slight in a simple black dress. She was exactly as her messages suggested. Not undone, not theatrical, a pillar of worn strength. A priest spoke of Ben's life. A friend told a story from college. Then Harper walked to the pulpit. Her voice was clear and steady. She didn't dwell on medical charts or goodbyes. She spoke about love, their first date, the off-key songs for their dog, the porch light he always left on when she worked late. She wasn't reciting facts. She was painting a portrait of a life cherished. In the back pew, I began to cry. Not for Ben, whom I didn't know, but for my Anna, and for this brave woman who now belonged to the same unwelcome club I did. The service ended. I meant to slip out, but the crowd flowed into the hall for a small reception, and I was carried along. I stood in a corner with a cup of bad coffee and watched her move through the room, accepting hugs and soft words with a practiced steadiness. She didn't notice me at first. Then her gaze moved across the back row. Our eyes met. She gave a small, polite nod, the kind you offer a person who might be a colleague of the deceased. She turned, made her way across the room, and stopped a few feet from me. "Thank you for coming," she said, automatic, gracious. I opened my mouth to reply. My phone buzzed. I reached to silence it, and the screen lit in my hand, bright, unmistakable. At that distance, there was no mistaking what she saw. The open message app with the long, unbroken thread of texts she had sent for months. The ones meant for her husband. The ones I had read. Her expression didn't fade. It stopped. Confusion, recognition, hurt. "Who are you?" she asked, low and even. The question was harder than any accusation. Nothing I could say would tidy what I had done. "My name is Elijah," I said, the words rough. "I'm sorry. You have every right to be furious. I should have told you on the first day." She studied me, eyes sharp. "You've been getting them this whole time? For months?" I nodded. "My wife, Anna, died 6 months before your first message. The number you were texting, Ben's, must have been disconnected and reassigned to me. At first, I didn't understand, and then..." My voice cracked. "I couldn't make them stop. Your words were the first light I saw in a long while. I was drowning, and your messages were a rope thrown to the wrong shore." I looked up, letting her see the plain truth of my loneliness. It was wrong. "I'm sorry. I'll leave now. You won't see me again." I turned to go, but she lifted a hand. Her eyes, hard a moment before, softened a fraction. She looked at my tired face and didn't see a monster. She saw a reflection. "Your wife?" she said, quieter now. "Tell me about her." So, in the corner of a crowded hall, I did. I told her about Anna. Her laugh, her love for bad movies, the way she read mystery endings too early and still cried, the small spaces she left behind that still ached.
In turn, she told me about Ben, his steadiness, his terrible jokes, the gardenia he'd leave on her pillow each morning, the light he never forgot to switch on. We weren't strangers anymore. We weren't accuser and accused. We were two people standing in the wreckage of similar lives, talking about the ones we loved. We stayed there for a while, words coming easier than I would have believed. The room hummed with condolences, the clink of cups, shoes on linoleum, Around us, grief kept its rhythm. Inside our small circle, something like understanding settled. An older woman touched Harper's arm. "Honey," she said gently, "it's time to go." Harper nodded. She looked at me one last time, her expression complicated and human. "You didn't answer them," she said. "Not a question." "I didn't. I couldn't take that from you." Her mouth twitched, half wince, half the ghost of a smile for a hard truth. "Thank you," she said, and I knew it was for that one small restraint. Then she turned and walked away. I stepped into the gray afternoon changed. The secret was out. The bond I felt with this stranger was now acknowledged and complicated. I didn't expect to hear from her again. I had been a shadow at the edge of her story. I went back to my house and braced for the old silence. But the quiet that followed wasn't the same. It carried a trace of her voice and the memory of what passed between us. I found myself straightening the kitchen, tossing the stale cereal she would have mocked me for eating, washing the mug I'd left by the sink for days. I folded the blanket at the end of the couch. I stood by the window longer than usual. That week, I slept and woke in smaller storms. I wrote an apology in a notes app I never sent. I walked to the coffee shop Anna loved and sat at a table facing the door, as if waiting for a person I hadn't met yet. On Friday, my phone buzzed. Her number. My heart lurched. "Elijah." "It's Harper. I hope this isn't unwelcome. I was at that coffee shop we talked about, the one with the apple pie, and thought of you. I hope you're having an okay day." I stared at my name on the screen, a message meant for me. I typed and erased 3 replies before sending a simple line. "Thank you for writing. I'm at the same kind of table you described. Apple pie sounds like a plan." We traded short messages for a week, careful ones. She set the tone, and I followed. We didn't talk about the texts at first. We talked about the weather, how grief makes you forget to eat, the strange etiquette of condolences from coworkers. We compared our city's worst intersections and the best cheap diners. She mentioned the dog with the leaf and sent a photo. I sent back one of Anna's favorite park, empty, the bench where I still sit. A few days later, she asked, "Coffee next Thursday, noon, the place with the pie, no pressure." I said yes, and lived inside that yes all week. The story circles back to a small cafe, noon on a Thursday. I got there early, picked a table by a window, and tried not to rehearse what I'd say. She walked in wearing a dark coat and no makeup, hair pulled back, eyes bright in a tired way I recognized. We said hello like people who had met twice already, once in a church, once in words on a screen. We didn't rush. We ordered coffee. I got the pie, I promised to share, and then didn't. Which she said was predictable for a man pretending he eats dessert only sometimes. We let the conversation find its pace.
We talked about Anna and Ben. We told the funny stories, the ones you pull out first because they're safer. Then the smaller ones. The way he whistled off key while folding laundry. The way she read the last page of a book first and pretended she hadn't. The way a particular news anchor's voice made Ben furious. We spoke about parts of grief you don't say out loud to most people. How grocery stores can undo you. How the smell of a specific soap can knock you flat. How exhaustion can masquerade as anger and then leave without apologizing. At one point, she reached for her phone and winced. "Sometimes I still text him," she said, thumb hovering over a blank thread. "The right number, and not like before, just, 'Look, the dog did something,' or 'The sunset would have made you swear.'" I talked to her out loud, I said, in the car. I think she was always the better driver. "She was, if you say so," Harper said. And for the first time, we laughed in a way that sounded like 2 people remembering they still could. We made some small rules without naming them. We wouldn't read back through the old thread together.
That belonged to a different conversation. We could mention the hospital when we needed to, but we wouldn't live there. We'd ask before sharing photos. If one of us needed to leave early, we would say so without apology. We stayed an hour past noon. When we stood, we both hesitated in that polite dance of who leaves first. She saved us by saying, "Same time next week?" "Yes," I said, and meant it. The week settled into a structure that felt earned. Thursdays at the cafe, sometimes a walk afterward around the block, where she pointed out a crooked porch light Ben used to threaten to fix and never did. And I pointed out the corner where Anna would stop to tie her shoe, pretending it had come undone because she needed a moment to catch her breath. We sent each other small texts that asked nothing. A photo of a paperback left on a bus seat, a screenshot of a recipe with too much butter, a notice that the library book sale was this weekend if either of us felt brave. Spring edged in, the light changed. The cafe owner started greeting us by name and bringing an extra fork with the pie without asking. We sat closer without remarking on it. Sometimes we said nothing for 5 minutes and let the silence be company instead of proof of anything. That felt like the greatest mercy of all. One afternoon she walked past a florist and paused at a bucket of gardenias. She said, "He always left one on my pillow," and her hand hovered over the petals but didn't touch. I thought I'd be angry at flowers forever. "Do you want one?" I asked. "Not yet," she said, "but I liked that I wanted to want one." On a different day, I asked if she wanted me to delete the thread. She looked down at her coffee. "It's strange, those words weren't meant for you, but you held them when I couldn't. If you want to keep them, I'm okay with that. If you want to delete them, I'm okay with that too. I'll keep them, not to read, to honor what they did." She nodded, and we let it rest. We didn't pretend our bond made anything tidy. Grief still barged in. Some Thursdays we canceled and sent one line, "Not today." Some days we talked too much about work because everything else was jagged. Sometimes she cried and said she hated the phrase, "at least," because nothing good ever followed it. We agreed to ban both.
On the first day of summer, she slid her phone across the table. The lock screen was a photo of Ben tossing a stick to the dog in a lake, water splashing like confetti. "I used to avoid this picture," she said. "It hurt too much that I couldn't hear him laugh anymore. Now I like that I can hear it in my head again." "I changed mine too," I said. "It was a black screen for a long time." I showed her the new one, Anna's hand holding a cheap paper cup of coffee from the park. She never met a bad cup she couldn't defend. "She would have liked this place," Harper said, and I agreed. We never labeled what we were. We didn't need to. We were two people who had learned to sit in the same room with their losses and still notice the way the light fell across a table. We were a pair of Thursdays strung together. We were something more than strangers and less than a promise, and that was enough. Months after the funeral, I stood in my kitchen and realized I was cooking again. Not heating, cooking. I texted her a photo of a pan with something that might have been risotto. "If you don't hear from me by morning," I wrote, "assume I'm glued to the stove." She replied with a video of the dog failing to catch a treat. "She's rooting for you," she said. "So am I." On the anniversary of Anna's death, I didn't know if I should say anything. She beat me to it. "Thinking of you today," she wrote. "If you want company, I'm at the cafe. If you want solitude, I'll be thinking of you from the other side of the window." I went. We sat at our table and didn't fill the space with noise. She slid a small envelope across the table, a printout of a poem about carrying water in cupped hands. It helped. It might help you. I thanked her and told her that on Ben's birthday, if she wanted someone to eat pie with her and not ask for a bite, I was available. She laughed and said she'd think about sharing for once. I look at her, the woman who was once a wrong number, and see not just a fellow traveler in loss, but someone coined, funny, and sharp. A person who, like me, is finding her way back to the living. Our story, born from a strange mistake and a lie, became the truest thing in my life. The wrong number wasn't just a lifeline. It was a bridge that connected my little island to hers. In our own way, we pulled each other toward shore. An honest, hopeful story about how the strangest coincidences can lead to real healing. What do you think of Elijah's decision not to correct the wrong number? Let us know in the comments below. If the story of a new beginning moved you, please hit like and subscribe for more powerful, heartwarming stories. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.